In this lecture, we are going to learn how to devise our own logic to display a pattern like this by writing a computer program. Okay, so we are going to invest our time in this lecture to learn how to display all these three patterns using our own logic. So let's get started. So first of all, we have this pattern wherein we are displaying the sequence of stars in multiple lines. So in this case, we are having actually 5 lines. So this is line number 1, line number 2, line number 3, line number 4, and finally line number 5, right? So whenever you are actually have this pattern kind of a problem, the question that you need to ask yourself is, what is the pattern? Identify the pattern first, and then you find out how many times that pattern is being repeated. In this case, the pattern is, this is the pattern, right? Displaying the star 4 times. So displaying the star 4 times is being repeated, right? In each line I'm displaying 4 star or asterisks, okay? And then obviously I'm also displaying a new line character in each line, so that for the next iteration I'm displaying 4 stars and a new line. So in each line I'm displaying 4 stars and a new line. So let me write it like this. So this indicates a new line character for now, okay? So how many times this pattern is being repeated? It's very simple. This pattern is being repeated for 5 times as it is visible from the pattern output, right? Now let's try to put this in a loop, because now I know how many times to repeat the loop. I need to repeat the loop for 5 times. So let me assume that initially I is 1, indicating line number 1, and finally I goes up to 5, indicating line number 5. So initially I assume that I already have this variable I, okay? I is initialized to 1, initialization in the for loop, okay? So what is the condition that will control my loop? I should always be less than equals to 5, because I have exactly 5 lines to be displayed. So I should be less than equals to 5, okay? And then each time I is incremented by 1. This will ensure that my loop runs exactly for 5 times. Now what I am doing in each iteration, whenever I equals to 1, I am in the first line. So what are the activities that I am performing in the first line? I am displaying stars 4 times and a new line, right? So I can have a printf here for displaying 4 stars together. I can write printf star 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 star, right? Also have a new line character placed here itself, okay? So this will display 4 stars, okay? And then it will also print the new line character. So the control will come here in the next iteration. Again, for the next iteration, it will display 4 stars, okay? This continues for 5 lines, okay? Finally giving us this output, okay? So this is a pretty simple and straightforward problem, and this is achieved just by writing a single for loop, okay? Now we're going to move on to this problem wherein I have to display this triangular pattern, right? Now in this pattern problem, what is repeated is not a constant thing. In the previous problem, 4 stars and a new line was repeated in every line, right, of the pattern. But in this case, if you see, in each line, the number of stars to be printed is different. So this is a variable. What is to be repeated is a variable number of stars, okay? Variable number of stars are repeated, okay? How many times it is repeated? I'm actually having 5 lines in this particular case. So let me assume line number 1 is represented by I equals to 1, line number 1. I equals to 2 represents line number 2, and similarly I equals to 5 represents line number 5, okay? So first thing first, I am very clear that my loop should run for I equals to 1 to I less than equals to 5, I plus plus, right? So this will run my loop for 5 times. I equals to 1 indicates the first line, and I equals to 5 indicates the last line. Now I need to note down how many stars or how many asterisks are displayed in each line. In line number 1, there is just 1 star displayed. Line number 2, there are 2 stars. In line number 3, 3 stars. Line number 4, 4 stars. And line number 5, there are 5 stars, right? So whenever I am inside this loop, whenever I equals to 1 indicates I'm in line number 1. So whenever I'm inside this loop, that indicates I'm now inside each line, okay? So inside each line, what I'm going to do is I'm going to display a star and a new line. In the second line, I'll be displaying 2 stars and a new line. 3 stars and a new line in a third line, okay? 4 stars and a new line character in a fourth line, and finally 5 stars in the last line. I also print the new line character there. Okay, so now what I am going to repeat in each line is to printing the star and a new line character. Okay, so printing a new line character is very simple. Okay, so I can just write printf \n. This will print the new line character. But how do I print star? Because that is variable, right? For each line it's different. First I'm going to display the stars, right? So for that I need to find out the relationship between the line number, that is I, and the number of stars. Let me assume that number of stars is j, right? So if you just look at this table, from this you can conclude that j is actually equivalent to I. So I can write the relationship between I and j, which is j is equals to I. So total number of times the inner loop should run is for j times. So inner loop should run for j times, which is equivalent to I. Okay, so I can write a loop here for, let me control the inner loop by j. J will help me to print number of stars. J starts from 1 and j will go up to less than equals to I, j plus plus. So in case of I3, in case of I equals to 3, I am in third line. Okay, so in that case, this j loop will run for 3 times because I need to display the stars for 3 times in the third line. Okay, so the body of this would contain printf. Okay, I just print a star here, single star. Okay, so whenever this loop runs for 3 times, it will be printing 3 stars for me. In line number 4, this runs for 4 times, so it will be printing 4 stars, and then it will print a new line character. Okay, so this loop will help me to display this pattern as it is. Okay, now let's discuss what is the outer loop doing. This is the outer loop, right? Outer loop is actually controlling my lines. Okay, it's controlling how many lines I am having. I equals to 1 indicates line number 1. I equals to 2 indicates line number 2, and similarly I equals to 5 indicates line number 5. So outer loop will take care of or control my lines. Okay, whenever I equals to 5, I am in line number 5. Okay, so outer loop will take care of lines. What is inner loop doing is, inner loop is actually helping me to display star and a new line character. Okay, so inner loop will actually display the star and a new line character in that particular line that it is in. Okay, so if it is in line number 5, it will print how many stars? In line number 5, it will print 5 stars and a new line character. Okay, so if this loop runs well, it will help me to print this particular pattern. I hope you have understood how it works. Okay, in this, the important thing to note down here is, you need to find out the relationship between number of stars, that is j, and I, and using that you can actually control the inner loop. Okay, inner loop is actually dependent on the outer loop here. Okay, because this loop is dependent on the variable I, which comes from the outer loop. Okay, I hope this is clear to all of you. Now let's focus on this problem wherein instead of displaying asterisks in a triangular form, I am displaying numbers. Okay, one more thing to note down here is that, here is a blank space available here. There are 2 blank spaces available here. Similarly, 3 blank spaces available in second line, and there are 4 blank spaces available in the first line. Okay, so I have how many lines in this? 5 lines. So let me represent I equals to 1 represents the first line, I equals to 2 represents the second line, I equals to 3 represents the third line, I equals to 4 the fourth line, and I equals to 5 the fifth line. So I indicates my line number. So in the first line, how many spaces are there? Let number of spaces represented by j. So how many spaces are there in first line? There are 4 spaces, and there is just one number that is to be displayed. The total number of values to be displayed is 1. Okay, first line is done. In the second line, there are 3 spaces and 2 numbers to be displayed, that is 1 and 2. In the third line, I have 2 spaces and 3 numbers. In the fourth line, 1 space and 4 numbers. And in the fifth line, I have no spaces, so number of spaces are 0, and there are 5 numbers to be displayed, and those numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Okay, now it's very clear on what is actually repeating on the outer loop. Outer loop will take care of number of lines. So how many lines I'm having? 5 lines. I equals to 1 indicates the first line. Okay, so total number of lines are 5. So I will go up to 5, I less than equals to 5, and I plus plus. Okay, so this is the outer loop, right? Now inner loop will do what? Inner loop will actually display spaces. Okay, so first it will display spaces, then it will display what? It will display the numbers or the values. Let's write, it will display numbers. Okay, and finally again a new line character to be displayed after I print all the numbers. Okay, so this is a new line character. So this is are the three things that is being repeated. Okay, first I'll write a loop because I don't know how many spaces are to be displayed. It is not fixed. In each line it is changing. Okay, in the first line there are 4 spaces. So this loop will control or help me to write number of spaces, to print number of spaces in this pattern, right? And then I'll have one more loop. Okay, one more loop that will take care of printing number of values. Okay, so number of values, this number of values in the first line there's one number to be printed. In the fourth line there are 4 numbers to be printed. That is taken care by this loop. Okay, this is total numbers to be printed. Okay, and finally I have to write one statement for displaying the new line. So here I'll write a statement for displaying the new line. So these three things are repeated for each line. If you just look at the second line, okay, in the second line, just focus on the second line. Okay, in the second line, first of all, you print 3 spaces, okay, and 2 numbers. So you'll come here and a new line character. So first let's try to find out what is the relationship between the number of spaces and the line number. Okay, if we just look at this, in line number 1 there are 4 spaces. So 1 plus 4 is equals to 5, right? In line number 2 there are 3 spaces. So 2 plus 3 is equals to 5. You add any line number. So let's talk line number 5, and total number of spaces in that line number, it becomes 5. So I can say line number is represented by I, right? Line number is represented by I, and total number of spaces represented by j becomes 5. So from this I can write j should be equals to 5 minus I. Okay, so total number of spaces to be printed is I less than 5, that is 5 minus I. So I can write the relationship between j and I. J is equals to 5 minus I. So once this is clear, it is very easy for me to write the inner loop that takes care of number of spaces. So total number of spaces to be displayed is 5 minus I. So I'll write a loop here for j equals to 1, okay, j less than equals to 5 minus I, j plus plus, okay, and then I'll write printf a space here. So I just write double quotes, I give a space and close the double quotes. This will print a single space for me. Okay, so this loop runs for as many times the spaces are to be printed in that line. So let's talk about line number 3. So for line number 3, I is 3. In line number 3, okay, it will be less than equals to 5 minus 3. 5 minus 3 is 2. So less than equals to 2. So j will be ranging from 1 to j less than equals to 2 in line number 3. So in line number 3, see, there are exactly 2 spaces. So this will run for 2 times. Okay, so therefore it will print 2 spaces in line number 3. Okay, so this is done. Now after you print space in each line, what you print is you print total numbers, right? Now the relationship between the total numbers to be displayed with the line number is exactly the same. Okay, so if total number of values to be printed is represented by k and line numbers are I can write k is equals to I, because in line number 3 you print 3 numbers, line number 5 you print 5 numbers, in line number 4 you print 4 numbers. Okay, so whenever you have this kind of a pattern problem, try to find out the relationship between the inner loop and the outer loop. Okay, so here the number of spaces is equals to 5 minus I, and total number of numbers values to be printed is equivalent to the line number, that is I. So I can write a loop here. Let me write a for loop. Okay, so this is taken care by the variable k, total number of values to be printed. It will run from 1 to k less than equals to I. This is the relationship we have already found out, and then k plus plus. Okay, so what do I print here? Because I'm not printing any star here, I'm printing the value of k. Okay, so I'll printf, I just write %d k. Okay, I'm printing k. So whenever I'm in line number 3, I is 3. So whenever I is 3, k will range from 1 to 3. K will be 1, k will be 2, and k will be 3. Right? So in line number 3, this is the line number 3, it will display 1, and then 2, and then 3. So I need to display the value of k. So this is what I've done here. Okay, so this will print all the numbers in that line. Okay, and then finally, once numbers are printed, I need to write a simple printf because this printf is not repeated. This is a printf that will print a new line character. I just need to print exactly one new line character in each line. So I just have this printf and there is no loop around it. Okay, so the first inner loop, this one, is responsible for displaying all the spaces. Okay, and this inner loop, the second one, is responsible for displaying all the numbers, and this statement is responsible for displaying a new line character. Now this is repeated totally for 5 times in order to display all these 5 lines, and this pattern will be displayed as it is. I hope this is clear to all of you. Now let's look at this problem. This problem is somewhat similar, just that instead of displaying 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on, I am displaying 5, 5, 4, 5, 4, 3, 5, 4, 3, 2 and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so let's try to see how it actually works. Okay, so again in this case there are spaces in each line. Okay, first I am actually displaying spaces, so let me note down all these spaces here. Okay, so in the first line there are 4 spaces. Okay, in the first line there are 4 spaces and there's one number. Okay, in the second line there are 3 spaces and 2 numbers to be displayed, that is 5 and 4. In the third line 2 spaces and 3 numbers. In the fourth line there is 1 space and 4 numbers. In the last line there is 0 spaces and 5 numbers. So again I can say I plus j. I is line number and j is number of spaces is equivalent to 5, because 1 plus 4 is 5, 2 plus 3 is 5. So from this I can find out the relationship between I and j. So j is equals to 5 minus I. So this is the relationship between I and j. J equals to 5 minus I. So j is total number of spaces to be printed. This is same as in the case of previous problem. Okay, so I can write the outer loop first. Outer loop will run for 5 times. I equals to 1 indicates the line number 1 and I equals to 5 indicates line number 5. Okay, so for I equals to 1, I less than equals to 5, because total number of lines are 5, I plus plus. This is the outer loop. And the inner loop, the first inner loop will take care of number of spaces as in the case of previous example. J equals to 1. Okay, j should be less than equals to 5 minus I and j plus plus. Okay, in the body I need to write the statement to print a space. Okay, this is exactly the same as in the case of the last problem. Okay, now the interesting part is to find out the relationship between k and I. Again, in line number 1, one number is displayed. In line number 2, there are 2 numbers displayed. Line number 3, 3 numbers displayed. So I can write, if total numbers are represented by k, k is equals to I. Okay, so I can run a loop here for k equals to 1. Okay, k less than equals to I, k plus plus. Okay, this will make sure that it will run a loop for displaying my values. Okay, based on the line number. Let's take an example of I equals to 3. Okay, so whenever I is equals to 3, k would be how much? K would be 1 and then 2 and then 3. Okay, if I print k inside this loop, it is going to display 1, 2 and 3 in line number 3. But in line number 3, I'm supposed to display 5, 4 and 3. Instead of 1, I need to display 5. Instead of 2, I need to display 4. Instead of 3, I need to display 3. It is the same, right? So inside this loop, I'm actually having k. Okay, but I need to display this value. Okay, so if you just observe here, 5 plus 1 is 6. Right? This is the value. Let's say this is value v. Value v is what I need to display. But what I have is value k. Okay. Now if I see, if I do 1 plus 5, it is 6. 1 plus 5 is 6. 2 plus 4 is 6. 3 plus 3 is 6. So can I write, if I write k plus my value is equals to 6. So the value that is to be displayed is nothing but 6 minus k. The value that I need to display is 6 minus k. Okay, so I just note down here the value that I need to display is 6 minus k. So I need to now write this inside the loop. So here I'll write printf. So what I need to display is %d, and here I'll not write k. If I write k, I'll get this pattern. I don't want this pattern. Okay, so here instead of k, we have already noted down, we need to display what? 6 minus k. 6 minus k. Okay, so if I write this, it will make sure that it will display 5 whenever I equals to 1. Let's check this out. Okay, so let's check this for I equals to 4 in the fourth line. I equals to 4 in this line. Okay, whenever I equals to 4, what happens is k would be, it will display 6 minus k. So k is actually ranging from 1, 2, 3 and 4 because k goes up to I is 4. Okay, so whenever k is 1, what is the value that is being displayed? 6 minus k. What is 6 minus 1? 5. What is 6 minus 2? 4. What is 6 minus 3? Is 3. What is 6 minus 4? Is 2. So 5, 4, 3, 2. 5, 4, 3, 2. This is what I need to display in line number 4. Okay, so this really works. Okay, so you just need to work with your pen and paper and see what is the logic, what is the pattern that's working out there. Okay, and then you'll be able to find out the logic for that. Okay, so finally, once you display all the numbers, you need to also display a new line. Okay, so for displaying a new line, I just write printf. Okay, a new line cap. Okay, now this is not the only solution for this problem. Okay, you can have multiple solutions for this kind of a problem, but we are going to stick to this solution for now. Okay, if you have the time and interest, please try to find out one more solution for this problem. So in this lecture, we have discussed the logic for displaying patterns like this, and then we have observed that for this kind of a pattern we can use a single loop, and for this kind of a pattern we can use a nested loop. And while you are having a nested loop, we have also seen how we can find out the relationship between the outer loop and the inner loop. You know how you can find the relationship between j and I and k and I. Okay, and then how you can actually put that inside the loop and make it work. Okay, so please make sure that you use your pen and paper to first of all figure it out yourself, and then you can easily write a computer program to demonstrate the same. That's all in this lecture. Stay tuned.